Should you be training a muscle 2 or 3 times per week? This has been a hot button discussion in the fitness space, especially recently, and I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this. Now, first things first, I do want to clarify that there is some ambiguity when it comes to what does it mean to train a muscle. And I'll give you a clear example. So if I did a bench press on Monday, would that mean I'm training my chest, my triceps, and my front delts once? If that's the case, then that is definitely different from training my chest as the primary and sole mover on a chest fly, my triceps as the primary and sole mover on a tricep pushdown, and my front delts as the primary and solo mover on a front raise. If that's the case, these two things are different. So a muscle being worked to some degree 3 times per week is a different discussion than a muscle being worked as the primary and solo mover. So I do want to make that clear distinction before we get into the specifics on the two different metrics that if you're looking to build muscle, you need to control for and you need to maximize as a whole. So with that out of the way, because those are obviously different things, whenever somebody says you should train X amount of times per week, you should probably ask, do you mean as the primary mover? Do you mean as a mover? Do you mean, you need to ask more specifics. In the gym. Now outside the gym, there's diet, there's sleep, there's recovery, scratch recovery, because that's going to kind of come into the frequency aspect. But there's two metrics, there's two sliders that you can control for and build muscle. Number one is intensity. Number two is frequency. So those are the two metrics. Now, you could maximize your intensity by training once every 2 or 3 weeks. You go all out to death, lots of volume, lots of intensity, and you're sore, you can't walk, you've got some minor injuries, you've got inflammation, and you hit it hard one day, maybe even once a month. Or you could go the opposite route and do 7 times per week frequency. So you train the muscle every single day, Monday through Sunday, every single day. Now, most people intuitively know that neither one of these, intensity 10 out of 10 or frequency 10 out of 10, both of these sliders being put all the way up, does not yield the best results. Because we're adding these two numbers together. If both of these are out of 10, and you can debate what's more important, frequency or intensity. You can debate what's more important. I think both of them matter, and I think both of them matter to a pretty similar level. I would probably opt with intensity over frequency, but they're pretty close. So I'm going to put them both out of 10. If you go with intensity 10 out of 10, then the frequency is a 0 out of 10. Or maybe we give a 1 out of 10 because you're doing something versus nothing. Those get you an 11 out of 20. If you go with the frequency 7 days a week, that gets you a 10 out of 10 on the frequency. Vice versa, you can only give a 1 out of 10 on intensity because you're always sore to sore and you're always sort of prepping for the next day. So both of these scores, whether you go all out on the frequency or all out on the intensity, they both give you a score of 11 out of 20. What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to get better than an 11 out of 20. I'm looking to get a 7 and a 7, or an 8 and a 7, or a 9 and a 6. If we can go into these numbers, now we're talking a score of 14 out of 20. 15 out of 20, 16 out of 20. And I think that should be the goal of your training, is to marry both of these things, because both of these things do matter. Both of these things are important. This is how you build muscle, is you give high levels of intensity, and then you give high levels of frequency. And at the end of the day, that's how you build muscle. So 2 or 3 times per week, look, it just depends on what works best for you. It really does. There's not going to be a clear cut, this is better, this is worse. I would probably, if you forced me to give you an answer, if you said, Zipper, I need an answer, I would probably try to get the intensity slider higher and try to keep the frequency at a 5 out of 10 or higher. So I would focus first, if you're not sure which one to prioritize, I would focus first on getting my intensity high, not so high that it's going to take you 3 weeks to recover, not so high that you're getting injured, but high, 8 or 9 out of 10, maybe even a 7, if you're not used to training hard. And then I would slowly work my frequency up from a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, and try to get both of them above 7. Obviously, you can't maximize. If you maximize either, then the other one goes south. But if we can try to get high frequency and high intensity